everybody, and welcome to Cabaret Secrets. Today's guest is probably one of the few theatre critics around with any real significant influence. He's the co-host of Theatre Talk on PBS. He writes a, I think it's fair to say, controversial theatre column for the New York Post. He's saying, and producer Liz McCann. I'm glad to hear that. And producer Liz McCann, I just read, says he's the like Rumpelstiltskin, always stirring the pot. Michael Riedel, welcome to Cabaret Secrets.
Pleasure to be with you. My nickname actually is one that was given to Cameron McIntosh years ago by Bernie Jacobs, the deceased now, a chairman of the Schubert organization, and he had great affection for Cameron, but he used to call Cameron the wooden spoon because Cameron was always stirring it up just for kicks. So.
Well, something tells me you like stirring the pot.
Well, listen, I cover showbiz, and you can't take it seriously. And I cover egomaniacs. I cover the most eccentric people. They're deeply insecure, but they're also profoundly talented and brilliant. But if you can't have a little fun at their expense, and ultimately at my expense too, because I don't take what I do that seriously, and I make fun of myself in my column as much as I make fun of everybody else. We're not curing cancer here. It really just is a show, and I think you have to approach it with a light heart. And let's face it, showbiz, especially the theater, is a breeding ground for gossip, and that's what I specialize in.
I first heard about you on Smash. I love that TV show. Did
Yes.
you know what I'm going to call? They called you the Napoleonic little Nazi.
Yeah, yes. I've been called worse. Fair, accurate, balanced. Far worse than Napoleonic.
But I mean, sure, I suspect you're sort of hamming it up a little bit, and you sort of cast yourself as a bit of a sort of a villain just because it makes better copy, because just being polite and nice is boring, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, it took me about, 6 or 7 minutes to find my personality when I started in this racket. And it's basically a kind of a combination of Walter Winchell, who was the really first major gossip column in America back in the 1920s, with a little Addison DeWitt thrown in there, maybe a little Nigel Dempster for your English listeners out there. Dorothy Kilgallen was also a tough columnist in her day. And when I started writing my column, I thought, well, I really didn't know anything about column writing or journalism for that matter, and I still don't. I've been faking it for 20 years now. But I went back and I read all of the great Broadway columnists of the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. And the thing that struck me about their writing was they really captured the jangle and the rhythm of Broadway in their era. So I thought this is probably a good way to approach it. So I tried to pick up that in the way I write, and just try to give a sense of people, to my readers, of what these colorful characters are like and what the feel of Times Square and Broadway is. They captured it so well in their writing back in the 20s and 30s, and I've tried to keep that tradition going. Sad to say, I'm the last of the Broadway columnists in New York. The newspapers, all the newspapers, the New York Times, the Post, Newsday, the Daily News, they all had Broadway columnists at one point, and I'm the last one left. The Times no longer has a Broadway column. Newsday did away with its column a long time ago. I had a column in the Daily News. When I left, they never replaced me, so I am the last of that great tradition of Broadway columnists.
Which is sort of remarkable considering how much business is brought to New York from Broadway and how popular it is. Why? Why are you the last?
I find that... I find that a bit sad and also ironic, too, that Broadway has never been bigger. It's a multi-billion-dollar global industry now. It is the #1 draw in New York, above the Yankees, above the Empire State Building. Every tourist who comes to New York lists the #1 thing they're going to do is see a Broadway show. And yet the newspapers and the TV stations, too, just don't feel that Broadway is big enough to cover. They'd rather go on about Gwyneth Paltrow or the latest supermodel or the latest rap singer or the latest big movie star. Under their very noses, Broadway has become one of the most lucrative pieces of the entertainment business, and yet the media still seem to think it's this backwater little kind of thing. So unless a big star comes to Broadway, like a Hugh Jackman or Bono the Edge with Spider-Man, they really don't pay much attention to it.
Mm. Do you remember the first cabaret show you ever saw?
Yes, I do. I was a kid, and we had this wonderful place called Rainbow and Stars, which was above Rockefeller Center.
Oh, the Rainbow Room?
Well, the Rainbow Room was the big place where you ate, and they had big bands and whatnot, but the cabaret was called Rainbow and Stars. And I remember I used to sit at the little tables, and there would be shiny plastic little stars all over the tables that we used to throw up in the air like confetti. And I remember my old critic friends, Jacques Lesourd, who's no longer with us, sadly, but he was the drama critic for Gannett newspaper. he used to call Rainbow and Stars the Great Feed Bag, because every critic went there and ate for free, and you could order Cristal champagne. And I remember seeing old critics like Stuart Klein and his wife. They'd order baked Alaska that would come out sizzling on the plate, and there was never a check for any of these guys, but they were living, the highest life, ordering the most expensive stuff on. And it went bankrupt. The place eventually went bankrupt.
But everything had the kindest reviews, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and they were all smashed. I mean, the bottles of Jacques would be, Stuart, you need more champagne? He'd throw him a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, and Stuart would catch it and open it up. Everything got good reviews, including, God, I think.
So who was it you saw there?
Well, I was going to say, even Anthony Newley, who gave a bizarre performance, got good reviews because they were all smashed. But the very first time I was there was Rosie Clooney. Oh. Of course, I knew her because she's one of my father's favorite singers. And I was working for a tiny little magazine with a circulation of about 3. So I got the worst table in the place, which was behind the bass player. And Rosie's a pretty big lady, but the bass was even bigger, so I couldn't really see her. So I was craning my neck around the bass player to get a look at Ms. Clooney. And about 2 songs into her set, she was looking at me, and she said, Bismarck, and Bismarck was the maitre d'. And in order to get a good table, you always had to slip Bismarck $100. I didn't have $100 in the bank to
that's why you were behind the bass player.
Exactly. And she said, Bismarck, this guy can't see. Get him a better table. And it was sort of a Goodfellas moment. I know if you know that movie when he goes into the club and everybody jumps around, then to impress his girlfriend. Then suddenly the waiters were running around like at the Harmonia Gardens in Hello Dolly, moving the tables around and table materials.
Yeah,
exactly right. And then boom, there I was right at the feet of Rosie Clooney. And then she sang the rest of the set just looking at this wide-eyed, starry-eyed kid. And she invited me back to her dressing room afterward, and we had a nice chat. And then after that, every time she came to New York, I always had the table right at her feet, and I always interviewed her, no matter what column or what paper I was at. I always did a Rosie Clooney
And
story.
you gave her a good review, I think, the first time.
Oh, yeah, she was great. I mean, how can you not? And at that point, by the way, her voice had become, as I often think happens with the great cabaret singers, the great performers, the older they get, the better they get. The notes, the high notes may not be there, but there's now life in every single lyric they deliver, every note they sing. And Rosie certainly had a life. I mean, the divorces and the sadness and the alcoholism and all that kind of stuff. And at this point, she could sing a song, oh God, what was that Irving Berlin song that I used to love that she did? Always, I'll be loving you, always.
Which is so often the throwaway.
Yes, but she would sing it so wistfully, you'd think, I'll be loving you always. And there was a slight irony to it, and you got the sense that she was, I'll be loving you always, but you're no longer here.
Sinatra said, sing the lyric, not the notes.
Yes, exactly. And the great singers are like that. Of course, George F. Kaufman, when Irving Berlin wrote that song, said, I played it for him, I'll be loving you always. And George said, can we change the title to I'll be loving you Thursdays?
Alternate Thursdays.
Yeah. But if you think about Rosie's career, I mean, she started out as basically a novelty kid singer. Hey, Mambo Italian, all those cheesy stuff back in the 50s, which frankly I have a great love. I love all those old silly novelty songs. But at the end of her career, when I got to hear her, to hear her put over Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, and she always sang the verse that no one sings, which is
the pants.
Yeah, well, no. If you read the whole song, I love him. I'll cling to him each spring to him and worship that. I'll sing to him each spring to him and worship the trousers that cling to him. I'm in love and love and love. The verse people don't do is then it's all over with. He's left. And that's the real Larry Hart.
That's the kick, right?
That's the kick, which no one does because they want it to be a love song. Yeah. But the fourth verse that no one sings, which I can't remember lyrics now, but go back and look at it, and it's basically, he's gone. He's left me. That's it. Oh, this obsession I had is over. Well, the obsession carries on.
I'm actually getting goosebumps. I really am getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Nobody does that,
which makes the whole thing, that's the point.
But that was Larry Hart's life. Remember, Larry Hart was an alcoholic gay man back in the 1920s and 30s when you couldn't be openly gay. He was deeply depressed.
These days, you just can't be an alcoholic.
Yeah, right.
How things have changed.
I know, it's true. It's very true. Gay culture's gone down the toilet now that everyone can be open.
Everybody can be gay these days.
I know, everybody. And it's a badge of honor to be gay. As my friend Jacques Lesourd used to say, he said, Riedel, I don't understand this. When I was growing up and I was gay as a goose, I never wanted to be married. I never wanted to have children. I certainly didn't want to be in the army. He said, what has happened to gay culture?
Doesn't it seem, though, it seems to me in cabaret that the actual voice, the quality of the voice seems to be the less important part of the equation, the ability to communicate with an audience either by what the performer says or by the way that they can deliver the sentiment of the lyrics seems to be what it's all about.
Well, I think, the best approach, and I remember Rosie saying this in interviews, and another cabaret singer I really love, I don't know if you know her in England, but she's 85 now and still puts on a great act, Marilyn May.
I know the name, but I've never seen
Wonderful.
it.
And Marilyn May had a resurgence. She was pretty much forgotten, and then there was the cabaret convention in New York about 7 or 8 years ago. She popped up and she did a couple of songs, and she's never stopped working since then. She's in demand all over the country, all over America now.
But what she did, as a performer myself, I always struggle when I'm required just to sing 1 or 2 songs. I find it really hard because I'm used to having a whole evening to develop a shape and get a relationship.
That's because you're an showbiz egomaniac.
Of course, we all are, from one to another. But so what did she do in those 2 numbers? What is it that, what did she get over in such a short time that made such an impact?
Well, what she and Rosie Clooney both have always said to me is that you have to approach the songs from the Great American Songbooks as one-act plays. They're character-driven. There's a story embedded in them, and that's what you have to put over in the lyric. You can't, as you say, just sing the notes. You have to make the person singing, I'll sing to him, each spring to him, and worship the trousers that cling to him. You have to make that person in your performance the obsessive, falling so deeply in love that you will worship the trousers that cling to him. If you think about that lyric, that is kind of a sick lyric. If you love somebody in that way, ultimately no good is going to come of that. You're turning your entire body and soul over to one human being, and in the final verse, which all great singers should sing, discards it.
And maybe you need to be 84 to have lived that long
exactly
to
right.
get it.
As I say, the older they get, very often the better they get. Marilyn, she had a very high range back in her day. It's all shifted down now. But to hear her do cabaret, what good is sitting alone in your room? Come here. People do it upbeat, The most important lyric is, I made my mind up back in Chelsea. When I go, I'm going like Elsie. That song's about death. And that song is defying death.
Well, I think that line is, for me, I think it's about life. I think it's about living life.
Living right at the moment. But you have...
until you die, living,
But you've got to bring the death in there. And you have to, as the singer, make Elsie a character in the song. Elsie just, she laid out like a... Queen, the happiest corpse I'd ever seen. I mean, what is that? The happiest corpse I'd ever seen.
Well, we all want to be that. I want to be that anyway.
But you've got to get the notion of death in there and defying death, which ultimately means living. And most people don't create Elsie as the character because they sort of just, life's a cabaret. That's the thing. Life's a cabaret, right. Old chum.
I made this terrible mistake when I first started singing. I remember doing The Autumn Leaves. I'd heard other people do it. The Autumn Leaves. Hey, and then I suddenly thought, what the hell am I doing? What's everybody doing? Why is this is the most heart-wrenching. God, it's a heartbreak. With a few notable exceptions that we're both familiar with, why is it that Broadway performers can't do cabaret?
Well, if they're young, they can't do it because they're used to being in a big show, and they're not used to holding the stage by themselves with just a couple of musicians behind them. And that is a unique and valuable skill that it's just me singing some songs on the stage. There are no chandeliers falling, there are no helicopters flying, there's not a chorus of 25 people. I'm not Hugh Jackman giving him the old razzle-dazzle. I'm in generally a smaller room. And I have to convey with only, slight movements. You certainly don't want a cabaret performer doing jazz hands all night long. That would be insufferable. And that is a different kind of talent from, being in a big Broadway show with all of the production numbers that come with it. Now, that said, I would say in New York we have a wonderful place called 54 Below, which is, I think, the best cabaret we have in New York now. And I see a lot of the kids in the chorus developing their cabaret chops there because they have nights where kids of the chorus can show up and do a song, do a number on their own. And a lot of kids who have made it, Sierra Boggess, for example, who's Christine Phantom now, very good Christine, by the way, she has a delightful act where she sends up Andrew Lloyd Webber, who's basically her meal ticket, but and Andrew loves it. It's great fun. And you see them developing a love for cabaret. And I think they all realize that, you're not, if you don't become the top tier Broadway star, eventually the career is going to peter out a bit, or you're just always going to be mid-level chorus kid, which if you have any ambitions, that wears thin pretty quickly. So they want to develop their own distinctive style, personality, and individualism. And that's the secret, I think, to a great cabaret singer is you can't be some cookie cutter, happy, peppy Broadway show person.
Which is sort of what they've spent years being trained to be, isn't it? So to get away from that is a challenge.
Completely. And as I say, all the great cabaret singers, there was no one like Rosie Clooney. There's no one like, Shirley Bassey. Or I love Shirley Bassey in the live recordings, not when she's doing, the 5,000-seat arenas where she's doing that, but when she was live at the Pig Al and Talk of the Town and all that
Same with Streisand, actually.
Completely,
in the early days, I mean, to magic.
Yeah, and there's a great, one of my favorite Shirley Bassey albums is Shirley Bassey live at the Pig Al, which I think was in Paris, if I'm not mistaken, and Talk of the Town. And it's just Shirley in a cabaret setting. You can hear the silverware clinking and the drinks being poured. And she does one of my favorite songs, Love, Look at the Two of Us, Strangers in Many Ways, beautifully. And it's not the Shirley Bassey that you expect, the gold finger, the brassy Bassey. She really could tone it down back in those days. And if you sing a song with the lyric, Love, look at the two of us, strangers in many ways, you don't have to do a lot of hand moments for that. It's all in the lyrics. And, it's a cliche to say in show business, but cliches are always true. Less is more. And the best cabaret singers that I know, with as Marilyn May can do, with a little arch of the eyebrow, I made my mind up back in Chelsea. When I go, I'm going like.
Which you can get away with in usually cabaret rooms are small spaces.
Yeah.
Do you think cabaret has to be in a small space?
Yes, preferably with people smoking and drinking. Cabaret really took a hit when they banned smoking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a place where you want to go and you want to smoke and you want to drink, and at some point in the evening, you want the performer to sing a song that is going to depress the hell out of you. That is a fundamental part of the cabaret experience.
And then hopefully cheer you up a little bit.
Absolutely. You go out on, you begin on a high note, but there's got to be that moment where, as Shirley does it brilliantly in their Talk of the Town, where she does one of my favorite numbers, which people should do more in cabaret. It's a Blaine and Martin song from High Spirits, which was the Noel Coward adaptation of Blithe Spirit. And it goes... You'd better love me while I'm here. The clock ticks fast above me. If you think fondly of me, you'd better love me while I'm here. Tomorrow I may disappear, so don't let this miracle melt away. If you think fondly of me, you'd better love me while I'm at that. Great, Shirley has a great number of it. And it's really peppy and upbeat and fabulous song. You should do it in your act, actually.
Do you think a cabaret show needs to have a strong theme? Do you think it should be approached like a musical theatre show with a beginning, middle, and end, and a shape and all of that? And because to me it seems that the theme really, that the running thread should be the performer, the personality of the performer. But of course, a lot of us have to have some kind of hook to get people through the door. It's a composer, a particular period.
Yeah, you would Sinatra and that. But if you're Shirley Bassey, she's the hook. So, but all the great ones, you could see the arc of the act. She would, as I say, she would do "You'd Better Love Me While I'm Here," upbeat, and then she'd take a pause, and she'd say, "Now I'd like to sing a song from my favorite singer, Nina Simone." And with these hands, I'll provide for him. The song's "The Other Woman." The other woman won't mend his socks. And suddenly you've gone from upbeat to, oh my God, this woman, like, she'll still take the husband back who's been cheating on her. That's when the women take the big gulp of the scotch, and the men tend to look the other way when that song comes along.
Let's not talk about that one. What about the chat in shows? That seems to me to be, for cabaret anyway, to be a real key part of it. The links. I'm ambivalent about that because I think the patter's got to be good.
You know, Rosie did very little chat between songs. She'd talk occasionally about her sister because they were a double act together, and her sister then died very young and tragically, I think, of brain cancer. So before she would sing a song that I think was my Virginia Ham, the song is called, and she and her sister would sing it on the radio. It was kind of a nice beat number, but she would give you the context. I used to sing this with my sister, whom she adored, and then died of brain cancer. So suddenly the song has a different meaning to it and takes you into her life in a very intimate way.
So it's a great setup.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, patter is okay if, one, your jokes are funny, and two, if you can give a context, I think, for the song you're going to sing. So when Shirley says, I'm going to sing this song by Nina Simone, you realize, okay, here's a great artist, Shirley Bassey, telling you this is the artist that I admire the most, and I cannot do the song as well as she can. And you really should go listen to her doing it. But I admire her and the song so much, I'm going to do it as best as I can. But I think sort of lighthearted chatter, giggly laughter, bad jokes, that's something to be avoided.
I can't stand it when you go and you're sort of getting a history lesson in 1944, blah, 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 blah. Oh, really? Because I think everything that we do, we need to try and touch people in some way.
Yeah.
Either it's hitting a nerve, isn't it? Either a funny one or something that's sentimental.
I mean, I do a lot of, sort of intros for friends of mine who sing, or we do evenings of light verse, and if you find the right biographical note about the songwriter, maybe Larry Hart, if you give people a little taste of his life and how really sad, I mean, he died literally in the gutter as an alcoholic. If you give him a little taste of that, then the song takes on a whole nother meaning. It's and then in 1934, Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote this.
I think Feinstein has one of the best setups for "Love Is Here to Stay." Our Love Is Here to Stay, when he tells the whole story about that it was the unfinished lyric. He does this setup, and suddenly this everyday song that we've all heard a thousand times, that we sort of stop really listening to. Think, this is nice, and we can maybe hum along to it. And suddenly, with this great setup, we're on the edge of our seats. It's like a whole new reading.
Yeah. Also, what I do think, though, that is one of the important things for a cabaret singer to do is to take a song that everybody knows backwards and forwards and has heard a million times, and they should be able to put it over in such a way that you feel you're hearing it for the first time, or you're hearing a lyric that you took for granted before, and it takes on a whole nother meaning. But that, again, is being the cabaret singer who finds the emotional moment in the song, putting it over, as I say, a short story or a one-act play, and making it feel fresh.
That's going to be my homework, to try and do a New York bossa nova style or something.
Yeah, I mean, a song like New York, probably New York is not the best example. Is one way to do it.
It is what it is.
But I'll tell you something. I have this. I'm going to play this for you. I wanted to mention this last night. I forgot to. You have the best rendition, My Way, right? A song you always do. It's Sinatra Evening, and we all know that song. You have not lived until you've heard the Berry Sisters do it in Yiddish, which I actually have the recording of on my
I'm going to put a link on the webpage for this podcast to that recording, just so everybody can hear
Nobody
it.
knows the Berry Sisters anymore, but the Berry Sisters were hugely popular in America back in the 50s and 60s, when, remember, there was still a generation of Jewish immigrants who really only spoke Yiddish. And the Berry Sisters took every pop song of the era and sang it in Yiddish. So My Way is...
And not for laughs.
No. Mein Weh. And to hear their raindrops keep falling on my head is keep klappa-kloppen on my klop. A kleep klappa-kloppen on my...
There's a whole new... This is the theme I've been looking for. This is my new direction.
The Sinatra jukebox. The Sinatra jukebox in Yiddish. I tell you,
Can you imagine?
Look for the... You can order there. You can get Amazon. The Berry Sisters, Mein Weh, and you will never be able to listen to that song the same way again.
What are your pet cabaret hates? Or are you sitting there with your pad and your pen? You know, oh God.
An evening where every song is an obvious choice. Sort of the obvious links between songs. I would much rather have two songs put together in a startling way where you hear them both differently at the same time. Can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but two songs that don't normally fit together, you found a way to link them up. A lot of people I find just string them together because all the way and then my way, stupid like that. A lot of young, inexperienced performers, I think, do that. Patter's very important. It's got to be self-deprecating, I think. You do that well. You poke a little bit of fun at yourself and the guys.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for someone like me.
I know. And better you do it before we get there.
Yeah.
You
Did you hear the woman last night? We should explain. We're at Holders for the festival here in Barbados. The music you can hear in the background is the act for tonight, practicing. But there were two things. A woman sitting right in the middle of the front row who didn't like Sinatra. And towards the end of the show, I loved it when I said, have you had enough? Yeah. And of course, 90% of people shout, no, and there's one woman, but the loudest went, yes. Fantastic.
But my favorite audience reaction story goes, this is when people were first bringing cell phones to the theater, so this is about 1999. And the cell phones were about the size of phone boxes.
That was the battery.
Right, exactly. And they were at, the woman was at this, Henry Krieger, I don't know if you know the composer, he wrote Dreamgirls. And he wrote this show called Sideshow, which was about these Siamese twins. They were, can't remember what their names were, but they were real in the 30s, and they were famous in sideshow circus acts. And Henry wrote this musical about these Siamese twins, and their big number was "I Will Never Leave You." I will never leave you, and you go, duh, please. Well, it was a great show, but during one of the previews, a phone rang, and people were like, "Phone ringing? Wait, what is that?" And this woman is fishing around her purse, takes out the gigantic phone, and she goes, "I'm at a play."
You spend most of your life around Broadway, deep in the Broadway scene. Tell us what's happening. What have we got to look forward to? What's coming? Give us a little bit of gossip that we might not know about. That were things we've got that are coming up.
Well, the big show that everybody is expecting to be the hit of the season is Woody Allen's Bullets Over Broadway, and of course, it's opening right at the time Woody's been engulfed in this controversy of Dylan Farrow, Mia's daughter, claiming that he sexually harassed her and whatnot. So the producers were very much concerned what impact this would have on the box office. But I think people have made their peace with whatever Woody Allen's peculiarities are a long time ago, and people still go to his movies. And all the evidence I can see from the early previews, people are loving Bullets Over Broadway and going to see the show. So I think that's going to be a winner. So
it's in previews now.
Yeah. So I mean, whenever this airs, one of the things where if you're headed to New York, I would get the tickets now, because I suspect once it opens, the ticket prices are going to shoot up, and it's going to be very hard to get into.
Trouble is, by the time this airs, it probably will have closed. Maybe 2.5 years by the time I get around to editing this. No, I'm going to try and put it up soon.
Well, Phantom of the Opera is a really good show to see. If you can get into that, that's
the second revival.
There's Les Mis still out there, still going. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But I love a musical, which I really had low expectations for, because I'm a little reluctant to praise or even go to see these jukebox musicals, as we call them. So the expectations were pretty low for Beautiful, the Carole King musical. But I tell you, it's an absolutely great evening in the theater. It's Carole King's story, and I find it interesting because she grew up in the era of the Brill Building, the great song writers of Burt Bacharach and Hal David, Neil Sedaka, Cynthia Weil, and Barry Mann, where you went to work every day.
She was one of them.
She was one of them, yeah, with Gary Goffin, whom she married, and then later he left her for one of the Shirelles, I believe. There you are. Sorry, Darlene, I'm leaving you for a Shirelle. That's knowing you. But they had these jobs. They were basically...
She should have left him for a Pip.
Or a Temptation. But they were basically 9-to-5 jobs. They would show up at the Brill Building. They had little cubbyhole offices, and the head of the songwriting department would say, "All right, I need an up-tempo number for the Shirelles. Yeah. Everybody was competing. Go. I need it in an hour." And they'd all be competing with each other and knocking out these great, great songs in the space of 45 minutes. And then, the song producer would pick the best one, and that went to the Shirelles. They'd say, not for the Shirelles, but we'll use it for the Temptations. And, the activity and the energy and the creativity. I mean, you think Bacharach and David, they wrote, Walk On By, Anyone Who Had a Heart.
What's thrilling for a writer is that most people, they write, whether you're writing a book or a song or a musical, you write on your own, in a quiet little space, in the hope that if you're very, very lucky, it may get picked up, somebody may hear it. But when you're right in that building where that every day someone's going to win the lottery.
That's right. And you know, next door, Cynthia Weil and Barry Mann would be writing, "Who put the bop in the bop de bop? Who put the ram in the ram-a-lam-a-ding-dong?"
Well, we can forgive them.
Yeah. Well, but then, and the next door, next door, Carole King and Gary Goffin are writing, "Will you still love me tomorrow?" Because they could do it all.
Yeah.
Up-tempo, slow, heartbreak, falling in love. That was the job. That was the assignment.
Yeah.
And they used to, this is how they phrased it. They said, your assignment is an up-tempo number for the Shirelles. So that's how they approached songwriting.
A great source of material for a new musical.
Yeah, wonderful. Evokes a wonderful era of songwriting that's gone. And Carole King, you know, her life was, let's say, not as dynamic as Frankie Valli's with Jersey Boys, you know, where the mob is involved and falling outs and all that kind of stuff. But the arc of the story is she starts off very successfully, very young. She falls in love with a high school sweetheart, Gary Goffin. They have a nice career together. They have a kid together. And then showbiz sort of hits, and he falls in love with a more glamorous Shirelle and leaves her. And her life sort of falls apart, and she comes out of it, out of her depression, out of her sadness, by writing Tapestry, which I would argue is perhaps the greatest singer-songwriter album ever written. And by the way, Clive Davis, the great record producer, told me that Tapestry was for 10 years the #1 selling album.
Wow.
No other single album has spent #1 for 10 years.
What is it that you think are the main differences between the scenes in New York and London as far as cabaret is concerned?
I don't really know the cabaret scene in London, because when Pete's on the Park closed, I don't know where you go anymore.
We've got this great new place called the Crazy Cox, which you've probably heard of. If you haven't, you must come down there.
It's in the restaurant across the street from the Piccadilly, right?
Yeah, basically, it's in the same. It was called the Brasserie Zedel.
The Brasserie, right. Yeah, that was just opening the last time I was in London, so I haven't seen it. But there's been a resurgence of cabaret in New York. I think mainly to do with 54 Below. Very, very popular. The Metropolitan Room has made a comeback. I mean, we lost the great rooms. We lost the Algonquin, sadly. We lost Feinstein's. We lost Rainbow and Stars. But it's gone underground, literally, at 54 Below.
Yeah.
And the important thing, though, is that the prices. Cabaret is a very, very tough business model, very, very difficult. And the thing that put Feinstein's out of business eventually was it just became so expensive. I mean, you would go and the cover would be $175. You know, a glass of wine was $25.
Yeah.
You'd have some soup and it would be $50. I mean, I will never forget going to hear Cy Coleman in Feinstein's. And the table next to mine was Fran and Barry Weissler, who produced Chicago, right, the revival. So they're worth $1 billion, let's say.
So they needed to borrow some money to pay the bill from
Barry Weissler came over to my table and said, "Michael, can I see your bill?" He said, "We had 2 glasses of wine and the carrot soup, and it's plus the cover. This is $500. This is outrageous."
Yeah, he's crazy.
So when a billionaire is complaining, you know, it's not long for this world. They really price themselves out of business. And 54 Below, I know they've had their struggles there, but they're determined to make it a reasonably priced evening. You know, $35 a head. The drinks aren't wildly expensive. You can have a decent dinner for $55, $60. And that's how they're able to get people to come in to give the young performers a chance.
I'm hoping that by the time this podcast is finally aired, that Michael Riedel, the musical, will be in previews.
Run precisely as long as Stephen Ward, the musical, did.
What would we call it? What would we call it?
That's a good question. You'd call it, give 'em the old razzle-dazzle, which is what I try to do in my columns every Wednesday and Friday.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Michael Riedel.
Subtitled by the Napoleonic Nazi. We've got to get that in there.
Give 'em the old razzle-dazzle, or I suppose, having destroyed so many careers and ruined so many shows and cost producers a vast fortune, thinking about all the people I've wounded, I suppose I call it, guess I'll hang my tears out to dry. But if I'm singing about myself, and of course everyone will be there reviewing me, and they'll all have a chance to turn the tables on me, that great old Johnny Mercer song, "So you met someone who knocked you back on your
Goody, goody.
Goody, goody." So you met someone. Now you know how it feels. Goody, goody. Hooray and hallelujah. It had it coming to ya. As they start trashing my show. So we'll call it Michael Riedel. Goody, goody.
Hey, Michael, thanks so much for talking to us today.
A pleasure. A great pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this Cabaret Secrets podcast. If you've got any comments or questions, please visit cabaretsecrets.com, where you'll also find details of the Cabaret Secrets book, an indispensable guide on how to create your own show, travel the world, and get paid to do what you love.